Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto become a Super Smash in the world of Smash. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Prologue 1. Super Smash Bros. Tournament. In a dark space somewhere was there a rectangular-shaped platform floating. On the middle of the platform, there was a shadowy figure looking down on a note block. There's a lot of promising names. He ate as he looked through various names that were written on the note block before noticing something as he said, "Ah. This is." He then looked off into the darkness again as he said, "Are you sure about this?" He stood there in silence for a few minutes before suddenly bowing, "I understand, sir. I will send her out immediately." He turned around and walked off, disappearing into the darkness as a large white hand suddenly appeared where he'd been looking earlier. It is soon time for a new Super Smash Bros. Tournament to begin. And a new hero to awaken. A loud booming voice could be heard, seemingly coming from every direction. Somewhere in the land of fire. "That's good, Gaki. You're doing great," Jiraiya of the Sannin said as he blocked a roundhouse kick from his young student, Uzumaki Naruto. It had been 2 months since Sasuke left the village and Naruto started his training trip with the Sannin, and right now, as part of the training, they were sparring to see how much strong the now 13-year-old had gotten in these past couple of months. "But it's not enough," Jiraiya said as he pushed the blonde's leg away before spinning around on his heel and delivering a kick to Naruto's abdomen, sending the young boy flying a couple feet before he rolled over the ground. "Now then, we're running low on supplies, so I'll go buy more. You stay put and continue sparring with one of your bunchins," Jiraiya said before turning around as he started walking, and he looked over his shoulder as he thought, the kid's getting stronger for sure. However, I fear that won't be enough for the next time he runs into Sasuke or Orochimaru. We need to start working with trying to control his Biju chakra soon. TCH. He's leaving me here all alone again while he's going off to peep. That perv, Naruto muttered to himself as he rose to his feet. Well. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, a nearly exact copy of the blonde ninja appeared. Wait, nearly. Naruto's eyes widened when he noticed it, but indeed, it wasn't a complete clone of him as he had intended. As for one, its hair was pitch black and the eyes were red. And while the clothes looked similar, the colors were completely different as the orange parts were black while the blue parts were purple, and the symbol on the clone's back was a bright blue. Insert music. Final Fantasy. Fight on. What the hell? What's going on? Naruto asked. However, the clone then suddenly charged at him without a word of warning before cocking back his right fist and thrusted it forward. Whoa, Naruto said in surprise as he barely dodged the attack by moving to the left. The clone then quickly drew a kunai as it swung it at Naruto 3 consecutive times as the blonde leapt backwards to avoid it while thinking, what the heck's going on here? The clone then summoned a Kage Bunshin before it helped it create a Rasengan. Wait, hold on a minute. We're only supposed to use taijutsu here, Naruto said as he held his arms out in front of himself. The second clone then dispelled as the first one charged at the blonde before slamming the spiraling chakra sphere at the blonde, sending him spiraling through the air before he hit a rock so hard that cracks appeared in a spider web pattern across it. Naruto rose up on his hands and knees before he looked up to see the clone standing there. The clone then summoned an other clone before grabbing it and swinging it over its head and down at the original. Naruto leapt out of the way as he started running through the forest that they'd been training next to, and he looked over his shoulder to see the first clone smash the second one into the rock, completely obliterating it as the second clone puffed out of existence. The clone then looked towards Naruto before suddenly turning into a dense pitch black smoke as it raced after the blonde, catching up with him in no time. As it did, Naruto looked towards it before it suddenly materialized back into the clone of Naruto as it delivered a strong punch to the blonde's abdomen, sending him flying through several trees before he rolled along the ground in a clearing next to a small pool of water and a waterfall. Naruto got back up on his feet while clutching his abdomen. He looked towards the clone which was walking out from the tree, though his eyes widened at what he saw. The clone had now gotten strange markings across its skin. Its pupils and irises had completely disappeared, and weird black tendrils of energy were coming up around it. Its form also started to seem a little shadowy, almost as if it wasn't solid. Putting his hands in his favorite hand sign, Naruto said, "Kage Bunshin, dispel. Return. Disappear." He got more and more nervous as the clone kept walking towards him without responding to his commands. Please don't hurt me," the blonde said in fear as the clone was just in front of him, but just then the clone leapt backwards before a series of blue blades shot down and hit the ground where it had been standing before disappearing. Grab the smash ball," an unfamiliar female voice said, causing him to look around in confusion before he looked up to see a weird multi-sea Lord ball floating in the air above him, and as if on instinct, he jumped up and grabbed the ball, causing it to disappear. As the blonde landed, he noticed colorful light enshrouding his body. "Whoa, what's this?" He then looked towards the clone, which had become enshrouded in a similar light, only that its light was black and purple. Feeling a great power welling up inside of him, Naruto let it out as he was suddenly covered in the Kyuubi's cloak. "What the?" he said as he looked down at his hands before looking over his shoulder to see the single swishing tail. He then looked towards the clone to see that it was about to do the same, but deciding not to let it, Naruto charged forward as a vermilion Rasengan formed in his right palm and he slammed it into the clone's abdomen, sending it spiraling in a tree before it dissipated into black smoke and faded away. Music end. What was that? Naruto asked himself as the cloak faded, and he looked around as he asked, "But that aside, where am I?" "You did well, Uzumaki Naruto. Much better than I had expected." There was that voice again. "Who is that? Where are you?" he asked before he looked towards the waterfall, only for his eyes to widen at what he saw. There was a young girl who couldn't be more than a year older than him. She had long blue hair, purple pupil-less eyes that seemed to look at the world with a bored look, and she was wearing a black and white dress with a purple ribbon just under her neck and white socks that went up to her knees and black shoes. She also seemed to have a black cat tail with a purple ribbon tied around it near the tip. The most shocking thing about her, however, and what made Naruto's eyes widen was the fact that she was floating in midair before the waterfall. A ghost. Naruto screamed in fright as his face was pale. "Don't worry, I am no ghost," the girl said. "Really, you're not honest?" Naruto asked. "Yes, honest," the girl said with a sigh. "Oh, okay then, but who are you, lady?" Naruto asked. "Fufu, I am the Witch of Miracles, Frederica Berncastle," the girl said. "You're a witch?" the blonde asked. "That's right, and a very powerful one at that," Berncastle said. Do you know what that thing that attacked me was?" Naruto asked as he looked towards where the clone had been. "An agent of the Dark One, a being bent on destroying all worlds," Berncastle said. "I don't understand what you're saying," Naruto said. Berncastle then closed her eyes before opening them again as she asked, "Uzumaki Naruto, do you want to become stronger?" "Heck yeah," Naruto yelled instantly. "In that case, there's a tournament being held which brings together many powerful fighters from many different worlds. If you join the tournament, you will become much stronger in a shorter time than you would if you were to continue to train with that old buffoon," Berncastle said. "Really? Where's the tournament?" Naruto asked. "It is in another world called the World of Smash. I will take you there if you want to enter. But if you do, know that you won't be able to return to this world for quite some time," Berncastle said. "I don't care. If I can just become strong enough to kick that bastard Orochimaru's ass and drag Sasuke Tem back to the village, then I'm in," Naruto said, causing Berncastle to smile. "Very well. In that case, come here and I'll take you to the World of Smash," she said as she held out her hand and Naruto jumped up towards her before everything suddenly went black. Ellipsis. 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 Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes to find himself on a grassy plain. And he quickly sat up before looking around. Where am I? He suddenly heard what sounded like a roar as he looked up to see what looked like an orange dragon with a flame on the end of its tail, flying through the air. He then looked towards where the dragon-like creature was flying and his eyes widened as he rose to his feet. Beneath the hill he was standing on was a massive city that towered over everything around it. Could this be that place that she was talking about? The world of Smash, he asked. Prologue 2. Smash City. Sugoi. This place is huge, Naruto exclaimed as he stood at the entrance of the large city. It was like what he'd ever seen before. He could have sworn the smallest buildings were the size of the Hokage Tower in Konoha while the taller ones were as tall as the Hokage Mountain. For someone from a seemingly primitive world like him, even though they had pieces of pretty advanced technology as well as a few modern cities here and there, it was quite a stunning sight, indeed. Naruto walked through the city streets as he looked around in awe. This place was truly amazing in his eyes. He just wished he could have showed it to all his friends. As he was looking around, however, he didn't see where he was walking and bumped into something before falling down on his butt. Itai. That hurt, the blonde said as he rubbed his butt before looking up in his eyes widened as he saw the person he'd bumped into. The person was dressed in an open white jacket with rolled-up sleeves, underneath which, he wore a green pilot uniform that were only halfway zipped up, revealing a black shirt underneath. Around his neck was a red scarf and on his hands he wore black fingerless gloves with a red plate on the back of the hands and red wrists, and he wore matching black and red boots on his feet. He also had a weird piece of high-tech headgear on his head with some weird green glass in front of his right eye and a mic in front of his mouth. He also had a holster for a weird-looking high-tech weapon on his right leg and a hexagonal-shaped device was placed on his left hip. The most surprising thing about him though was the fact that he looked just like a fox on two legs, tail and all. "Hey, are you all right?" the fox asked as he offered him his hand. Huh, Naruto looked up at the fox dumbfounded. Did the fox just talk? I asked if you were all right, the fox said as he took Naruto's hand and helped him up to his feet. Oh, yeah, I'm fine, the blonde said. I've never seen you around here before. You must be new. I'm Fox McCloud, Fox said as he folded his arms over his chest. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto introduced himself and Fox nodded. Well then, Naruto, are you here to take part in the tournament? Fox asked. Yeah, I guess. Naruto replied as he scratched the back of his head before asking, so do you know where I sign up? At this Fox nodded before pointing up towards the center of the city as he said, yeah, it's up at level 6 of the city. Just beneath that extremely tall tower. All the way up there, huh? Naruto said before his eyes widened slightly as he turned to Fox who stood there with his right hand on his hip. Wait, level 6. Yeah. The city is separated by 7 levels, each one at a higher elevation than the previous one. Where we're at right now is level 1. This is where all the markets and shops are located, as well as various cheap bars and hotels for those who can't afford the more expensive ones. And level 2 is a residence area for normal citizens. Each of the other levels also has their own purposes. But level 6 is where you'd want to go as that's where the overseers live, as well as where you'll need to get registered. Fox explained. The overseers? Naruto asked. They're the ones who oversee the tournament and makes sure that you follow the rules. They're also very powerful. In fact, a while back, there was this guy named Mewtwo who thought he could take them on. However, he ended up getting completely crushed, and as a result, he was completely missing from the next tournament and only returned a while into the one after that again. Fox said, causing Naruto to gulp. Kurama no Kyuubi. Well, now we know why Mewtwo wasn't in Brawl and is only DLC in the new one. They sound pretty strong, Naruto said. Trust me, they are. I saw their power with my own eyes. Fox said. Well, guess I should get going up there then, Naruto said as he began walking away. Hey, do you even? Fox started. However, Naruto then leapt up onto the nearest building and jumped further upwards towards the 6th level of the city, causing the anthropomorphic animal to shake his head with a sigh. There he goes. He then thought. Though I've got the feeling that there's something that I forgot to tell him. Ah well. Diaresis. Entrance to level 6. Naruto landed on a rooftop above a staircase which led to a large gate in the wall he assumed surrounded level 6. He jumped down to the stairs before walking up to the gate. However, just then, a small blue mechanical creature flew down in front of him, the red propeller attached to its head being what kept it in the air. Welcome to Smash City, it said. What the heck are you? Naruto asked. I am one of the many omochao around the world. Who observe the battles between contestants as well as gives helpful tips to beginners. The omochao said. In that case, why don't you tell me how to get past this gate? The blonde asked. Sure, he could probably just run over the wall, but for once he'd rather not make a bad first impression on the overseers. You can't, the omochao said. Huh, Naruto asked intelligently. As a new feature, in order to compete in this year's tournament, you need to be part of a 3-man team. You can't enter unless you bring 2 others with you. The omochao said, and Naruto's head slumped before he turned around dejectedly and started to walk away. However, then his eyes lit up and his head shot up as he got an idea, and no. Cage Bunshins. And Naruto's head slumped again as he continued walking. What he didn't notice though was that there was a cloaked figure standing atop the wall, observing him from above. Level 5. Naruto came down the stairs to level 6 and walked into the street as he was in deep thought. Where am I gonna find 2 people who wants to team up with me? Ah, help me, a female voice yelled, knocking the blonde out of his thoughts as he looked up just in time as a large reptilian thing ran by him, carrying a young woman over his shoulder. What the? Naruto looked after them surprised. Somebody help me, the woman yelled as the reptile continued running. Oh, right, Naruto said as he dashed after them. Hey, you. Stop right there, whatever you are. HMPH. The reptile looked at Naruto over his shoulder before throwing a spiny shell he was holding at the blonde. The shell appeared in the blonde's face before shooting straight into the ground, causing a huge explosion. Sion as the reptile snickered to himself, believing the kid had been properly dealt with. He couldn't be more wrong as Naruto had jumped onto the rooftops in order to avoid it and was currently running along said rooftops. Faye. The reptile snorted out before Naruto suddenly jumped into the air, and in a puff of smoke, an identical clone of the blonde appeared before the original threw him down towards the reptile. The reptile dodged the clone, however, as it crashed into the ground before running into an alleyway away from Naruto, who then landed back on the ground and ran after them. After some twists and turns, the reptile came to a dead end and he seemed to look around for a way out before turning around just as Naruto arrived. Now there's nowhere for you to run, the blonde stated as he finally got a good look at the creature before him and the woman he was holding. He was a rather massive reptile that, from the looks of it, appeared to be a turtle on 2 legs, if the green spiky shell was anything to go by. His body was mostly covered in hard orange scales except for his chest and stomach, which had softer white skin. He also had 5 spiky black metal rings, 2 around his wrists, 2 around his biceps. And the final one he wore as a collar around his neck. Atop his head he had a pair of horns with a wild mop of red hair between them. He also had a small tail with 2 spikes on it. The woman had long wild blonde hair and blue eyes. She had a crown on her head, indicating she was a royal, and for clothes she wore a pink dress which had a blue gem in the center of the chest. A pair of white gloves that reached just past her elbows, and on her feet she wore a pair of red heels. Well, aren't you persistent? What's your deal anyway? Can't you see I'm busy? The turtle asked. What the? You can talk? Naruto asked, flabbergasted, though he really shouldn't be surprised as he's already met a talking fox. Of course I can talk, you pipsqueak. The turtle exclaimed angrily, causing Naruto flinch slightly. Hey, calm down, will you? I was just surprised as all. Anyway, can you put the lady down already? Naruto asked. Hey, you think that I, the great King Bowser Koopa, will do as you say? Bowser asked. Wow, you're a king? Naruto asked in surprise. That's right, now hurry along and leave me in peace. Bowser said. That won't happen, Naruto said as he narrowed his eyes. What? Bowser asked. Insert music. Naruto's main theme. Even if you are a king, I'm still gonna kick your ass unless you let her go. Naruto yelled, his eyes flashing crimson for a second. HMPH. You sure talk big, but let's see if you manage to hold true to your words. Bowser said before throwing the woman onto the ground and charged towards Naruto. As the massive turtle approached the blonde ninja, Naruto leapt back before skidding across the ground, and as he stopped, he pulled out a shuriken before throwing it at the Koopa. However, Bowser's scales proved to be Ooh, tough as the throwing star just bounced off. Naruto then held his hands in a cross-shaped hand sign as he said, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. And an identical version of him appeared next to him before he two of them ran towards Bowser, who was still charging towards them. However, Naruto and his clone both jumped into the air just before they hit the Koopa, causing said oversized turtle to skid to a halt before turning around just in time to see Naruto and his clone land behind him as they formed a ball of blue energy in the original's right hand. As the ball was formed, Naruto charged forwards, as his clone dispersed before slamming the sphere of chakra into Bowser. Rasengan, and the Koopa was sent spiraling backwards. He managed to dig his claws into the ground, however, and planted his Fei as he skidded backwards before coming to a halt and rising to his full height. Music end. He was about to attack Naruto again, but just then, a fireball shot down and hit the ground in front of his feet, leaving behind a scorch mark. The two combatants then looked up in time to see a man just slightly taller than Naruto land next to the aforementioned blonde. He had a large mustache under a big round nose, brown hair and blue eyes. His clothing consisted of a red shirt under a pair of blue pants that went up to his chest and had straps going over his shoulders, with yellow buttons at the front. He also had white gloves on his hands and brown boots on his feet, and atop his head, he had a rad cap which had a white circle on the front with a red M in it. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw the man, as he was one of the people that appeared in his dream. "It's a me, Mario," the man said as he threw his right arm down to his right and held his left hand in a clenched fist before his face. "Mario," the woman said as she had gotten to her feet and ran over to them before coming to a stop. "It's gonna be alright, princess?" He then glanced towards Naruto as he asked, "Can you keep on fighting?" "Of course," Naruto replied as he prepared for another Kage Bunshin. "HMPH. Very well, I'll let you win this time, but know that next time, I'll be victorious," Bowser said, surprising the three humans. "Fat chance," Naruto said as Bowser ran off. "Thank you for saving me again, Mario," the woman said as both males turned towards her before she leaned down and gave Mario a kiss on the nose. She then stepped over to Naruto and leaned down as she said, "And you too, young warrior." And she gave him a kiss on the cheek, causing him to blush. As she rose back up to her feet she asked, "Now, then, mind telling us your name?" "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm currently looking for teammates so I can join the tournament," Naruto said. Prologue 3. The third teammate. "Nani, you're a princess?" Naruto asked in surprise as he looked at Peach, who sat at the opposite side of the rectangular-shaped table from him. Peach nodded from the chair she was sitting in as Naruto sat back down in the couch on his side of the table. They were currently in a room in one of the 5-star hotels on level 5 where the more expensive hotels and bars and even various casinos resided. "You mean, you saved the princess without knowing she's a princess?" Mario asked as he came from the kitchen with some tea and 3 cups. "No, I thought she was just some girl being kidnapped, so I went and saved her," Naruto replied as Mario poured the tea into the cups and sat one down in front of Peach and another in front of Naruto as he took the third one himself as he remained standing. "That's admirable of you. Most people in your situation would have either ignored it, taken one look at Bowser and fled, or, if they knew I was a princess, done it just thinking of the reward they'd get," Peach said before taking a sip of her tea. "Well, none of those things occurred to me," Naruto said with a grin before taking a sip of the tea himself. This is good. That makes it even more admirable," Peach said. Mario took a sip of his tea before saying, "So, Naruto, you said you were looking for teammates to partake in the tournament." Naruto nodded before saying, "That's right." A thought then crossed his mind. "Mario-san, are you going to join the tournament as well?" "I am," Mario replied. Naruto then rose to his feet excitedly as he asked, "Then how about we team up? I'm sure if the two of us worked together then no one could stop us." Now, calm down. I had actually been looking for teammates myself for a while, and was planning to ask you, myself. But aren't you forgetting something?" Mario said, and Naruto looked down as he realized what he meant. "Yeah, you're right, we need a third team member," he said. "Don't let that get you down. There's still a week before the tournament begins. So we have a plenty of a time. Mario said. Tee-hee. Mario's right. Why don't you rest here for now and you can go out and search tomorrow? Peach suggested. Oh okay. Naruto said. Next day, Naruto yawned as he came out of the room he was sleeping in to see Mario sitting on the couch with his arms crossed, seemingly thinking about something. Huh, Mario-san, have you been up all night? Naruto asked. Naruto, we still needed to find a third teammate. Mario said. Do you know someone? Naruto asked. As a matter of fact, I do. Mario said before rising to his feet and walking over to Naruto. It's an old friend of mine. Do you know where he is? Naruto asked. I think so. Come. Mario said before walking towards the door. Hyrule Field. Some time later, they were standing atop a small hill, looking over a large field, though Naruto noticed a castle with walls surrounding it with some parts of the wall being rather worn down. There were also blue banners hanging from the walls, and between them Naruto and Mario and the castle were two armies fighting, one which consisted of humans wearing armor that had a blue theme to it, and the other army was a bunch of various monsters. The most common of which being red pig-like creatures on two legs. Kurama no Kyubi. This stage is based off of Hyrule Warriors in case you couldn't tell. Whoa, what's going on over there? Naruto asked as he looked towards the battle as a large dinosaur-looking creature started rolling over several of the human soldiers. They're locked in a never-ending battle. Every time someone dies, they'll just respawn and start a fighting again. It is a battle with no beginning and a no end. Mario said before looking elsewhere as he said, now then. The one we're looking for is a right down there. Naruto looked towards where Mario was looking to see two people fighting. One of them had brownish blonde hair, blue eyes, pointy ears, and his attire consisted of a green tunic over a chain mail shirt and a white shirt under that again. He also wore white pants, brown boots, and a pointy green cap, and for weapons he had a longsword with a blue hilt in his left hand and a steel shield in his right. The other one had blue hair, matching blue eyes, and wore a blue jacket with golden outlines that split from waist down in front and on the sides. He had the jacket's arms tugged up and also wore a brown chest guard and brown shoulder guards, all of which had golden outlines. He also had black pants and brown boots, and in his hair was a golden prince crown. He also wore a blue cape with a red underside that had a red gem on it and a pair of black fingerless gloves that went up to his elbows. Like his opponent, he also had a longsword, though his was in his right hand and it had a golden hilt. Who are they? Naruto asked. The green one is a Link. The one I was thinking of asking to join our team. And the blue one is a Marth, the Hero King. Mario said. I see, but it looks like they might have decided to join up. Naruto said. Not to worry. Link and Marth have been a common sparring partners since the day of a melee, as Marth was the first other swordsman in the tournament that could actually give a Link a good fight. Besides, Marth already has a team. Mario said. In the meantime, in Link and Marth's sparring match, Link swung his sword towards the blue-haired swordsman, however. Marth blocked it before knocking Link's sword away and he then thrusted his sword forward, but Link jumped back to avoid it before pulling out a bomb and he threw it towards Marth. The Hero King then cuts through the bomb vertically before both halves explode behind him. Hey, Link, Marth. The two turned towards the voice to see Mario and Naruto come running towards them. Ah, Mario. Link said as the two came over to them. And who's this? Marth asked as he looked at Naruto. His name is Naruto. He and I have teamed up for the tournament, but we need a third teammate. Mario said. So you came to ask me to join you? Link asked. That's right, Mario said with a nod. In that case, I'm looking forward to working with you. Link said as he put his hand on Naruto's head as he smiled. The ground then suddenly started shaking and they all jumped out of the way before a Dodongo came rolling past them. Smash City Graveyard. Within the graveyard of Smash City there was a certain gravestone which said, R.I.P. Satoru Iwata 1959-2015. Prologue 4. Team Mario. So, it's Team Mario, right? Welcome to the Super Smash Bros. Tournament. An overseer said as Mario, Naruto, and Link were standing before his desk, having come not too long ago to register. Unlike all the other overseers, this one didn't have his hood on, revealing his face. He had pale brown hair in a ponytail as well as a single bang which went down in front of his face. "Thank you," Mario said before the three of them left the room. "So when did the tournament start again?" Naruto asked as they walked through a corridor. "In about a week. Though if you want, you can take on exhibition matches to get you familiar with the tournament rules and such." Link said. "Exhibition matches?" Naruto asked. "They're matches sponsored by the overseers that are held up till the start of the tournament. Some are planned ahead of time while others are between volunteers," Link explained. "If it's not a planned match, however, you've got to sign up for it. Though the receptions are closed for today," Mario said. "Where do I sign up?" Naruto asked. "The reception office is on level 3. The same level as the one where the residence for participants for the tournament are located," Link said. Okay, I see," Naruto said. Fu. I see you've already found yourself a team, Uzumaki." Naruto and the others stared towards the source of the obvious female voice to see one of the overseers walking towards them, and Naruto noted that her height were around the same as his own and Mario's. "Do I know you?" Naruto asked as he tilted his head in confusion. "What, you've forgotten me already?" the overseer asked as she pulled off the hood, revealing herself to be none other than the Witch of Miracles. "Frederica Berncastle, you're," Naruto said in surprise, though both Mario and Link started glaring at her, seemingly ready for a fight, as Link put his hand on his sword while Mario balled his hands into fists. Berncastle just ignored them however, as she walked past them while saying, "You should sign up for an exhibition match to get yourself familiar with the rules." When she had passed them, she came to a stop and looked at them over her shoulder with a bored expression as she said, "I hope you're able to entertain me. If there's one thing I hate, it's a boring match." She then continued walking. Level 6, Courtyard. The three walked out into the courtyard as they headed towards the gate which led to the stairs down to level 5. "Seriously, what's with that girl?" Naruto asked himself out loud as they exited the building. "You talking about a Berncastle?" Mario asked. Naruto nodded. "She's a pretty shrewd little girl," Link said before adding, "You'd do best not to get involved with her. Those who try only end up getting burned." "No, that's not quite right. I hear that they get turned into mincemeat and then fed to her cats." At this, Naruto gulped audibly. That's only a rumor. Though, right? Naruto asked. "What, you scared?" Link asked as he leaned in close. And no, I'm not," Naruto said. "Link, stop, you're scaring him. And Naruto, you don't have to be afraid. It is only a rumor." Berncastle's quarters. Berncastle, or just Bern for short, walked into her quarters as she closed the door behind her. As she entered her living room, she walked past one of her cats that seemed to be drinking milk from a single plate, and there also seemed to be something else in the milk, though it was too dark to tell what. However, as Bern passed the cat, it became obvious that it wasn't milk at all, but blood, and the something else was intestines. Bern walked over to the window as she pulled the curtains slightly to the side. While looking down at Team Mario in the courtyard as a vicious smile that couldn't belong to any human appeared on her face and she said, "Hehehe. I wonder if you'll be able to kill my boredom, Uzumaki Naruto." Next day, Level 3. Exhibition Reception. Exhibition matches. Naruto thought as he looked towards the reception counter, before walking towards it. Excuse me, I'd like to sign up for the exhibition matches," he said as he approached the counter, and the girl sitting behind it looked at him. She appeared to be around his age, maybe a year older, and she had black hair in a pair of twin ponytails which appeared to have been put up in a hurry to mimic someone. She also wore black clothes that seemed to be some kind of school uniform. "Okay, what's your name?" she asked nervously with a slight blush. "Uzumaki Naruto," was his response and she wrote it down on the computer. "Team?" she asked. Naruto uttered. "What team are you in?" she asked, being more specific as she looked at him. "Oh, Team Mario," Naruto said. "Okay," the girl said as she wrote it down before asking, "And are you new?" "Hi," Naruto said as he nodded. She wrote it down before clicking on the mouse and then after a few seconds, she turned back to look at the blonde. "All right," Naruto-san, your match will be in 1 hour and 25 minutes at the Tenkaichi Budokai stage. Where's that? Naruto asked. Let's see here. The girl said as she started pressing away at the buttons. Tsugumi-san, why don't you take a break, and let me take over for a while? A woman said as she approached them. She had long silver hair with a small ponytail sticking up from the top, and she was wearing a red dress. Mira-san, sure. The girl, now identified as Tsugumi, said as she stepped out Rom behind the counter as the woman sat down instead. Why don't I show you the way, instead? She offered. Sure, Naruto said as he followed her. I'm Harudori Tsugumi, by the way. Tsugumi said, leading the way. Oh, nice to meet you, Tsugumi-chan. Naruto said. So, Naruto-san, what kind of world do you come from? Tsugumi asked as they exited the building where the reception was located and started walking down the streets. A ninja world, I guess. Naruto said. A ninja world? That sounds intense. Tsugumi said. What about you? What kind of world are you from? Naruto asked. Oh, well, I'm going to school. At this she noticed that Naruto was already bored, but she then quickly said, oh, but it's not an ordinary school. It's called Death Weapon Meister Academy, or DWMA for short. And it's a school that trains people called Meisters to wield demon weapons so that they can fight evil. Really? That sounds awesome. I'm starting to get a little jealous. Naruto said before asking, so where's your weapon? I don't see it. Oh, well, you see, the demon weapons too, are actually people as well, but they have something in their genes which gives them the ability to turn into weapons. One of the original purposes for DWMA was to teach weapons to be able to control their abilities so that they wouldn't accidentally harm anyone. Tsugumi explained. Yes, I see. Naruto said as he nodded his head, pretending to understand, causing Tsugumi to sweat drop. Anyway, it's only the EAT class that's allowed to go on missions and such. I'm in the NOT class, which isn't nearly as exciting. Tsugumi said. Then why don't you join the EAT class? Naruto asked. Oh no, there's no way I could. I'm really not cut out for that. Well, sure, me and my friends defeated the witch, Shala, by ourselves. But there's no way we could join EAT. Tsugumi said. Tenkaichi Budokai stage. Sometime afterwards, Naruto and Tsugumi found themselves in a different city as they approach. A huge crowd of people that were standing around a stage where two people were currently fighting. The two young teens managed to squeeze their way through the crowd so that they could better watch the battle. One of the fighters was a man dressed in tight spandex and wearing a helmet on his head, and for some reason he reminded Naruto of Guy. The other one, the one who caught the blonde's eye on the most, was a weird furry creature with purple fur, long hair that seemed to be tied into two ponytails that went down from behind her head, and she had two horns sticking up from her head. She also wore blue clothing. And it's a heated battle between the veteran, Captain Falcon, and the newcomer, Lilac, as the captain charges at the young dragon with his down special, the Falcon Kick. Lilac jumps into the air and comes down with her down aerial, a drop kick. The announcer announced as he was commenting on the battle. Yeah, Lilac. Naruto turned towards the source of the voice to see a green and black cat jumping up and down as she was cheering for the purple dragon. Captain Falcon dodged the drop kick before he then charged forward and hit Lilac with an elbow strike, and his left fist was then engulfed in flames as he charged forward again. However, Lilac held her arms in front of herself as if to protect herself as a shield appeared around her, and as the captain approached her, she rolled past him before scratching him in the back with her hand and then following up with a kick. Lilac then charged forth as a motorbike suddenly appeared out of nowhere and she rode it right at Captain Falcon. However, the captain turned around before he cocked back his right fist and it was covered in flames before he shot it forward at breakneck speed. Falcon punch. And the bike was completely destroyed. However, Lilac had jumped into the air just in time, and as she was in the air, she rolled herself into a ball before shooting down, straight at Captain Falcon, hitting him in the chest, and sending him off the stage. And with a devastating hit from young Lilac's standard special, Captain Falcon is knocked off the stage, thereby losing the match. The winner by knockout is Lilac. The announcer announced. Lilac, you did it. The green cat yelled as she ran up on the stage and hugged the dragon. Well, of course. What did you expect? Lilac said. Young Lilac, that was an excellent match. Captain Falcon said as he got back onto the stage and walked over to the two anthropomorphic animals. I'm sure that you will make it far in the tournament. Thanks. You're pretty strong, yourself. Lilac said. As the three then walked off the stage, the announcer came up and said, this time we have another newcomer, and a member of Team Mario, Uzumaki Naruto. It's your turn, Naruto-san. Tsugumi said. Hey, wish me luck, Naruto said as he jumped onto the stage. Huh, who's that guy? Lilac asked as she, the cat, and Captain Falcon were now standing amongst the crowd, right next to Tsugumi. I've never seen him before. Captain Falcon said in thought. Well, the guy did say that he was a newcomer, like Lilac. The cat said. Good point. The captain said. He's a ninja, and his name is Uzumaki Naruto. Tsugumi said as she looked at them. A ninja? Lilac asked. You know him? The cat asked. Yeah, I guess. Tsugumi replied. Is he your boyfriend or something? Lilac asked. BBB boyfriend. Tsugumi thought as she blushed heavily before saying. No, we barely even know each other. Little girl, you said earlier that he was a ninja, right? Captain Falcon asked. Little. Tsugumi thought as she looked down at her chest and touched it for a sec before looking at the captain and said, yes, that's right. I look forward to seeing his moves. The captain said as he looked towards the stage. And his opponent, who is also a newcomer, the announcer began as someone started walking onto the stage from the opposite side from where Naruto was. And the blonde's eyes widened as he saw who it was, a member of Team Wolf, Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke, Naruto said in surprise. Naruto, so I see Burn brought you here after all. Sasuke said. Sasuke, what are you doing here? Naruto asked. The same as you, I'm here to get stronger. Sasuke said. Okay, listen up, here are the rules. It's a stock match where you have one stock each, and items are set to low. Now, are the combatants ready? The announcer asked. We are, Sasuke said. Wait, Sasuke, Naruto started, but he got drowned out by the announcer. 3, 2, 1, Hajime. And Sasuke then charged at the blonde before punching with his right fist, however Naruto caught it. Sasuke, why don't we just sit down and talk about this? Naruto asked. There's nothing to talk about. Sasuke said as he moved his left leg in for a roundhouse kick, pushing Naruto away as he jumped into the air with his right foot, flipped around and landed on his left leg before delivering a kick to the blonde's gut. As Naruto staggered while clutching his stomach, he looked towards Sasuke who then said, I left the village so that I could gain the necessary power to kill Itachi, and I won't return until I've gained it. Then I'll just have to take you back by force. Naruto said as he charged at Sasuke, and they started trading a series of blows. As they fought, everyone in the audience watched intently, with the key figures in the audience being Tsugumi, Lilac and her friend, Captain Falcon, Wolf and his team's third member, and a few others, including the mysterious individual that was watching from the roof of the Tenkaichi Budokai building. During the fight, the two ninjas showed off various jutsu as Naruto used Kage Bunshin and Rasengan, while Sasuke used Gukakyo, Hausenka, and Chidori, speaking of which. Rasengan, Chidori. The two yelled as they charged at each other, their respective forward specials colliding, causing the two attacks to cancel each other out. They then pant D before engaging in another series of punches, kicks, and kunai strikes. However, Naruto jumped back as he noticed an item that had dropped down from wherever the items are coming from. He picked up the item, which appeared to be a beam sword before charging at the Uchiha and swung the sword. Sasuke, however, jumped back before jumping into the air, and as Naruto followed him with his eyes, his eyes widened as he saw another one of those multicolored balls from before hovering there, and Sasuke grabbed it. Hey, this battle's already over, Sasuke said as he landed in a crouching position BEF. Or he rose to his feet and turned around. Just then his skin became darker as his hair grew out and hand-like wings sprouted out of his back. HMPH. This ends here, he said with a smirk as he FLE. W towards Naruto as a black Chidori formed around his left hand. Lament Chidori, he called out as he thrust the Chidori into Naruto's chest, and the blonde was sent flying straight off the stage. And winner by knockout is Sasuke. The announcer announced. Naruto-san. Tsugumi yelled as she ran through the crowd towards Naruto as Lilac, the cat, and Captain Falcon followed after her. Naruto-san, are you all right? The girl asked. She reached the blonde and kneeled beside him. Why yeah, I'm fine, Naruto said as the others showed up as well. HMPH, is that you've got? You disappoint me, Naruto. If you can't do better than that, I don't know why you even bothered to come here, Sasuke said as Tsugumi and the others glared at him before he headed off to meet with his team. As he walked off, however, the other fighters amongst the crowd also glared at him. Clearly Sasuke wasn't very popular. On the roof of the Tenkaichi Budokai building was a mysterious person standing, though judging from the cloak he was wearing, he must be one of the overseers. As he looked down on the people below, another overseer appeared behind him. So this is where you've been. The voice identified her as Burncastle. Any interesting matches? Number. The first one said after a short pause as Burn walked up next to him, and that's when he turned around and said, come on, Burncastle-san. We need to get things ready for the tournament. He then walked off and disappeared. Uchiha Sasuke, huh, foo. Burn said as she watched Sasuke talk with his two teammates. So you want power so that you can find and kill your brother, is that it? Well, in that case, let me grant you the power of my miracles, so that you may succeed. She then smiled evilly as she added, and then I will grant a marvelous death to both you and your brother as I tear your guts out and exposes the truth of why he killed your clan to the whole world. Kyahahahahahaha. With Naruto. That was a well-fought battle, Uzumaki-san. Captain Falcon said as he, Lilac, the cat, Tsugumi, and Naruto were standing a ways away from the tournament stage. Yeah, just too bad your opponent was such a jerk, though. Lilac said. No, it's all right. He's always been like that. Naruto said. So then, do you two know each other? The cat asked. Yeah, we do. We both come from the same village, and he's the closest thing I've got to a best friend. Naruto said. With friends like that, who needs enemies? The cat said. So, Naruto, do you have a team yet? If not, you could join mine. I've been looking for people like you to have on my team. Lilac said. Haha, sorry, Naruto said as he scratched the back of his head. The announcer guy said he was part of Team Mario, remember? The cat said, causing Lilac to lower her head in disappointment. Oh, she then looked hopefully at Tsugumi as she asked, then what about you, Tsugumi? Sorry, Tsugumi said. Oh, she muttered as she lowered her head in disappointment once again. Hey, cheer up, Lilac. I'm sure you'll find teammates eventually. The cat said as she put her hand on Lilac's back. That's easy for you to say, Carol. You're only an assist trophy. Lilac grumbled as she put her hand on Carol's shoulder. Said cat chuckling slightly. Prologue 5. Farood Rika. Whoa, this one looks just like me. Naruto said in bewilderment as he held a trophy of himself in the Cage Bunshin stance in his hand. Currently, he was standing at the outdoors trophy shop in the first level of Smash City. Aside from the one he was holding in his hand, there were a huge variety of other trophies on the counter. And even more so on the shelves on the wall in the back. Do you really have one for every participant? The blonde asked as he looked at the clerk. 3 to 4, actually. Depending on how many final smashes they have. And it's not just the participants either, but also assist trophies, and other characters and objects from their worlds. Some worlds are even represented solely through trophies. The clerk, who was none other than Miragen Strauss, explained. Really? Naruto asked as he looked back down at the trophies on the counter. Wow. Whoa tilde. Naruto turned to the person standing next to him. They've even got a Gekko trophy. She was ogling like a child over a single frog trophy. She had shoulder-length brown hair with a hairpin on the right side, and matching brown eyes. For clothes, she wore a white short-sleeved shirt with a popped collar underneath a sleeveless light brown summer sweater, a gray skirt, and, while Naruto couldn't see it from where he was standing, she wore light brown shorts under her skirt. On the left side of her sweater, she also had what appeared to be a symbol of some kind, though Naruto had no idea what. "Can I really have it?" the girl asked, staring starry-eyed at the frog trophy. "But of course, if you got the money, that is," Mira said with a smile. "All right, then," the girl said as she brought out her purse, and Naruto's eyes widened. The girl's purse was in the shape of the frog's head. The girl then paid the necessary amount before turning around as she held the trophy up above her head while staring sparkly-eyed at it like a child. "Aren't you a bit old for something like that?" Naruto asked. Wah." The girl then turned her body towards Naruto as she quickly hid the trophy behind her back. While staring off to the side. "And no, I'm just buying this for a friend is all." "Haha, hey, oh, I think it's cute that you still like childish things at your age," Mira said with a smile, her eyes closed. Really?" the girl asked as she turned towards the silver-haired woman, hoping that she'd finally found someone else like her. "You do know that she's mocking you, right?" Naruto said. "What was that?" the girl suddenly yelled, and Naruto could only barely react in time to avoid the bolt of electricity that shot at him. Naruto then ran off as several other bolts of electricity shot after him as he yelled, "What was that for, you crazy lady? What did you call me? Hey, get back here, you brat!" the girl yelled as electricity sparked around her. "Oh, my, I hope that's not gonna result in a bad hair day," Mira said casually. With Naruto walked through the streets, having narrowly avoided getting the shock of his life. As he looked down at the trophy still in his hands, he remembered that he had forgotten to pay for it. He looked back towards where he had come from for a bit. He really didn't want to run into that girl again, so he just turned back around again and continued walking. Well, he could just pay for it the next time he ran into Mira. He put the trophy away as he walked before hearing a voice. "Excuse me, sir. I seem to have gotten lost and can't find my teammates, sir. Can you help me, sir?" The blonde looked around, and upon realizing that there were no one else who the voice could have been directed at, he looked down at the slightly shorter girl who had spoken. She had long blue hair, innocent purple eyes, and she wore a green silk dress. Naruto didn't exactly know why, but she kinda reminded him of a cat. Though, speaking of cats, while he could see no malice or mischievousness on her face, she had the same face as Berncastle, which instantly put him on guard. What the, Berncastle? He asked and the girl looked at him puzzled. Her head tilted before she smiled brightly. I don't know who this, Berncastle, is, but I'm looking for my teammates, since I got lost and now I can't find them, sir. The girl said in a completely innocent voice. It almost made Naruto want to take her home with him. "You're lost? Well, I guess this is a big city. Sure, the name's Uzumaki Naruto. Datbeo," Naruto said with his trademark foxy grin. "Thank you, sir. I'm Farood Rika, sir," Rika said as she grinned back in an attempt to imitate him. Soon after. "So, where did you see your teammates last?" Naruto asked as the two of them walked. "It was just after we had come down from entering into the tournament, sir," Rika said. "So you were on level 5. But how did you get separated in the first place?" Naruto asked. "Oh, that was entirely my fault, sir. I saw a green Kaneko kitty and decided to follow her, sir," Rika said. "I see," Naruto said with a dumbfounded expression on his face while thinking, a green cat. Could it be Carol, as a mental image of said cat, sheepishly scratching the back of her head while saying, "Nya," appeared in his mind. "I was running after the Kaneko, and before I knew it, I was all the way down here in level 1, sir," Rika explained before adding, "and that's when I saw you, and figured you'd help me, sir." "Wait, you don't even know me, so how did you know I'd help you?" Naruto asked in bewilderment. "Haha, I just had to look at you, and I immediately knew you'd help me, sir," Rika said as she smiled brightly and added, "Nipa." Naruto looked at her in puzzlement. There was definitely something strange about the girl. "All right, with Link. Hey, Link, how's it going?" Link sighed in exasperation at the familiar voice of the person who had run up to him as he walked through the streets of level 3. She had long blonde hair in a pair of braided ponytails that went down from the sides of her head and were lying down in front of her shoulders, and she also had blue eyes and point ears. Her clothing consisted of a hooded green robe that was tied beneath her neck and went down to her thighs over a white short-sleeved shirt. And she also wore a brown skirt over black shorts, brown boots that went up to her knees, and brown gloves. Around her neck, she had a golden compass, and finally, she had a pair of crossbows, one attached to each of her boots. This girl was Linkle, and she was apparently from a world very similar to Link's own. In fact, the Hyrule Field stage that he and Marth had sparred on the other day was apparently from her world. But, that aside, ever since arriving in the world of Smash, she's barely left him alone at all, kind of like an overly attached yandere girlfriend without the super crazy murderous part. So, anyway, where are you going? Linkle asked. I'm going to train with my team. Link lied. He was actually on his way back to their room. Really? Can I come with? Linkle asked excitedly. Find your own team to train with. Link said. Oh, I've already got a team. Linkle said. Then you can just leave me alone and go train with them. Link said. We've actually just finished up training for today. Linkle said, and Link hung his head with another sigh. Then why come train with my team? Link asked as he stopped walking and looked at the girl, who almost looked like she could be his twin sister. Well, since we're both legendary heroes, I just wanted to see how we fared against each other, you know. Linkle said. Link stood there thinking for a while until he finally spoke. Okay. We can have a match if you want. However, afterwards, I would like it if you left me alone. He then resumed walking. Yay! Linkle shouted excitedly before she ran after him. With a certain girl. A certain girl was walking down the streets of Level 2. She was known as the Railgun and was the third strongest Level 5 Esper of Academy City, a city of science. Despite that, someone calling herself a witch had suddenly appeared before her and her friend Kuroko before bringing them into this strange world. The girl, Masaka Makoto, had originally gotten caught up on the idea of being faced with new opponents, which is why she had agreed to join the tournament. Though, she never actually thought that she would be taken to another world like this. She let out an exasperated sigh as she walked. At least she'd been able to find a pair of teammates relatively quickly, even though one of them was a bit eccentric. Ah well, at least she wasn't as bad as Kuroko, mainly because she wasn't a pervert. This city really is big, huh? It's gonna be impossible to find just two people here. Makoto looked towards the voice to see that blonde idiot she had run into earlier at the trophy shop. You know, it'd probably be easier if I knew what your teammates looked like. Naruto said as he looked down at Rika. Me tilde one of them's a samurai, and the other's a doggy, sir. Rika responded in an innocent tone. A samurai and a dog. What's with that team? Naruto thought, flabbergasted as he imagined the cute Rika together with a heavily armored samurai and a dog. The samurai is the team leader, right? Naruto asked. No, the doggy is, sir. Rika stated, and with that, all of Naruto's preconceptions on common sense were shattered. Found you. Naruto and Rika turned towards the voice to see a girl standing there. Naruto recognized her instantly. After all, it hadn't been that long since he ran into her. Ah, Biri, Naruto exclaimed. Arg, what is it with idiots like you always calling me, Biri? The name's Masaka Makoto. Makoto yelled as, in her anger, she sent out electrical currents every which way. Once she had calmed down a little, Makoto pointed at Naruto as she said, anyway, in return for those insults earlier, you owe me a battle. Wah, you mean right now? Naruto asked. Of course I mean right now, you idiot. Makoto yelled. Sorry, but I'm a little busy right now. Maybe some other time, Naruto said. Huh, busy? Makoto asked. Apparently, that had brought her to her senses. Yeah, this girl here has gotten separated from her teammates, so I was just helping her find them again. Naruto explained. Oh, I see. Makoto apparently hadn't noticed the blue-haired girl before now, but then, ah. Huh, what is it now? Naruto asked, though Makoto didn't seem to hear him. Why you're that witch, Burncastle, she yelled as she pointed at Rika. Recognizing her face, me tilde, Rika cutely tilted her head to the side in confusion. And Naruto then went on to explain that Rika was not Burncastle. Oh, I see, so they only happen to look alike. Makoto asked before leaning down so that she was on eye level with the brunette, and she bowed her head while saying, "I'm sorry for my outburst earlier." "It's all right, sir," Rika said with a smile before adding, "Nipa's so cute." Makoto thought as her eyes and mouth turned into those of a cat's, and she even appeared to get whiskers. After that, both Naruto and Makoto were helping out Rika find her teammates. Final Valley. Link and Linkle were standing in the Final Valley stage, facing each other. It was a rather small stage, with most of it being taken up by a waterfall. And on either side of the waterfall was a large statue. There were also 3 platforms at the top of the waterfall, one large, one in the middle and one smaller one on either side of it. Fall down between the platforms. And if you can't get back up with a recovery, then you're doomed. The 2 were currently standing on opposite sides of the middle platform. Link had his sword in his left hand and shield in his right, while Linkle had her hands on her crossbows, ready to draw them at a moment's notice. Insert music. Naruto. Beautiful green wild beast. Then, without any kind of warning or signal, Link charged forward, and as he approached his opponent, he quickly swung his sword horizontally to the left. Linkle jumped into the air to avoid it before aiming both of her crossbows at her fellow blonde and firing repeatedly. Link blocked many of the arrows with his shield before he jumped back. And as Linkle landed back down on the ground, she dashed forward and appeared underneath Link before firing at him with one of her crossbows before turning away from him as she got into a crouching position and fired her crossbows behind herself, and then she turned around and fired the crossbows ahead of herself before firing them all around herself, and she followed up by jumping towards Link while spinning around in midair, and as she landed, she began firing repeatedly, while slowly moving the crossbows away from each other. She then followed up by jumping sideways into the air as she continued firing while spinning around, and as she landed she finished off with one last shot from each crossbows. Instead of arrows, however, they were large bombs, forcing Link, who had been hit by many of the arrows, bringing his damage percentage to 42%, was forced to jump over to the rightmost platform. Both to escape the bombs themselves, but also to escape the blast radius. Linkle then jumped after him, and while she was in the air, her crossbows suddenly vanished as so me kind of wing ornament appeared on her boots. She then flipped in the air before coming down with her heel towards Link. However, Link blocked her attack with his shield before swinging his sword at her. She then somersaulted backwards before landing on the middle platform as Link jumped after her before swinging his sword at her several times. However, with the increased speed provided by the Pegasus boots, Linkle maneuvered out of the way of the sword's path thanks to some fancy footwork. Link put his sword and shield away before pulling out a bow and arrow, and he fired the arrow at Linkle, who dodged to the side before getting out her crossbows, and she aimed both crossbows at Link before firing wildly. Link took out his shield to block it before pulling out a bomb, and he threw it at Linkle. The girl stopped firing as she looked up towards the bomb coming towards her, and she then jumped out of the way before switching out for her Pegasus boots, and she charged towards Link at a great speed that dust was kicked up behind her. As she approached him, she kicked up, aiming for Link's face with the sole of her boot. Link just dodged it by moving his head to the side as he felt a great wind pressure pass by his head. The 2 then smirked at each other as the battle continued. Music end. Naruto, Makoto, and Rika. Naruto, Makoto, and Rika were walking through level 3 of Ash City as they kept their eyes open for Rika's teammates, a samurai and a dog. "There they are, sirs," Rika exclaimed as she pointed towards her teammates who stood a bit away, probably looking for her. "That's your teammates?" Naruto asked. "Yes, sir," Rika replied. "Then why don't you go over to them?" Makoto said. Rika then began running before she came to a stop and straightened herself, using Naruto and Makoto to look at her confused, and when Rika turned around, she had the same empty look in her eyes as Burncastle, almost as if she was possessed, and when she spoke, her voice sounded just like Burncastle's. "Naruto, Makoto, you have to watch yourselves. There are forces at work here that you don't understand." She then smiled before turning around again as she ran towards her teammates. There was definitely something strange about that girl. Now then, Naruto felt an ominous aura, and turned around to find Makoto staring at him with sparks flying around her. "It's time for our battle," she said. "Wait, now, of course now, I hope you're ready. Hey, where do you think you're going? Get back here." The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.